You're not even half the woman my mother is." The words hit me like a lightning bolt as I stood there holding the dessert spoon. My daughter-in-law Jessica sat across from me with the cruelest smile I'd ever seen. The dining room fell dead silent. My heart was beating so fast I thought it might explode. But what happened next? What I said back to her. It changed everything forever. If you want to see how this story ends, make sure to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible true stories. Now let me tell you what really happened that night. My name is Margaret. I'm 70 years old. And 6 months ago, I made a decision that I thought showed how much I loved my son. Instead, it almost destroyed my life. That Tuesday evening started like any other family dinner. I had spent the entire day cooking David's favorite meal, chicken with creamy mushroom sauce, rice with fresh vegetables, and that special vanilla pudding he used to be Jimmy for when he was little. I remember standing in my kitchen at 2 p.m., stirring the sauce with such care. I wanted everything to be perfect. The table was set with my best crystal glasses, the ones my own mother gave me before she died. The silver forks and knives sparkled under the dining room light. I even bought fresh flowers for the centerpiece. You see, I hadn't seen David and Jessica for 3 weeks. 3 long weeks where I wondered if I'd done something wrong. 3 weeks where I called and got short answers. "We're busy, Mom. Maybe next week, Mom." But tonight was different. Tonight they were coming for dinner. At 6:30 p.m. sharp, I heard their car in the driveway. My heart jumped with joy. I smoothed down my best blue dress, the one I wore to church, and hurried to the door. David looked tired. More tired than I'd ever seen him. His clothes were wrinkled, and he kept checking his phone every 2 seconds. But Jessica looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. Her red dress probably cost more than I spend on groceries in 2 months. Her shoes were shiny and new. Her hair was done perfectly at some expensive salon. She looked beautiful, but there was something in her eyes that made my stomach feel funny. "Hi, Mom," David mumbled, giving me a quick hug that felt more like he was going through the motions. "Hello, Margaret," Jessica said with that fake smile I knew so well. The kind of smile that never reached her eyes. From the moment they walked in, something felt wrong. Jessica looked around my living room like she was seeing it for the first time, like she was judging every single thing. "Don't you think it's time to freshen this place up?" she said, waving her hand around. "My mother's house is so much more modern. She has those trendy pieces that really make a statement." I felt my cheeks get hot, but I smiled anyway. "Would you like something to drink before dinner?" During dinner, Jessica found fault with everything. The food was too hot, then too cold. The music was too loud, then too quiet. She even complained about the smell of my favorite vanilla candles. "This chicken is a bit dry, don't you think?" she said, cutting it into tiny pieces. "My mother makes this dish with a wine reduction that's absolutely divine." David said nothing. He just kept eating with his head down like he was afraid to look at me. I tried to keep the conversation light. I asked about their jobs, their friends, their weekend plans. But every answer was short and cold. "Work is fine. We don't see friends much. We're too busy for plans." The tension was so thick, I could almost taste it. But I kept hoping that dessert would change everything. That vanilla pudding had been David's favorite since he was 7 years old. Surely that would bring back some happy memories. I went to the kitchen and carefully scooped the pudding into my best bowls. The ones with the tiny blue flowers around the edges. I added a small mint leaf on top of each one, just like I used to do for special occasions. Walking back to the dining room, I felt hopeful for the first time all evening. Maybe this would turn things around. Maybe we could finally have a nice moment together. I set Jessica's bowl in front of her first, then David's, then my own. "I made this with extra vanilla, just the way you like it, sweetheart," I said to David, hoping to see that little boy's smile I remembered so well. But instead of gratitude, instead of that sweet smile, Jessica looked up at me with the meanest expression I'd ever seen. "You know what, Margaret?" she said, her voice getting louder. "I've been thinking all evening about something I need to tell you." My hands started to shake. Something in her tone made every alarm bell in my head start ringing. You're not even half the woman my mother is. The words came out like poison. Like she'd been saving them up all night, waiting for the perfect moment to hurt me as much as possible. The spoon fell from my hand and clattered onto my plate. The sound echoed through the dead silence of the room. David's face went white as paper, but he didn't say anything. He just sat there like a statue, staring at his pudding. That's when I knew. That's when I realized this wasn't just Jessica being mean. This was planned. They had both planned this moment to humiliate me in my own home. And that's when I did something that surprised even me. I pushed my chair back, stood up tall, and said the words that would change everything. Then maybe she can start paying your rent. We hope you're enjoying this incredible story so far. Please tell us in the comments where you're watching from. We absolutely love hearing from our amazing viewers around the world. Are you Team Margaret, or do you think she went too far? Let us know. The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. David's mouth was hanging open like he'd seen a ghost. Jessica looked like someone had just poured ice water over her head. What rent? David stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. But to understand why that moment was so powerful, I need to take you back 6 months earlier. Back to the day that started this whole mess. Back to when I thought I was being the best mother in the world. It was a cold February morning when David showed up at my door. Not called first. Not texted. Just appeared on my doorstep at 7 a.m. with tears streaming down his face. I was still in my bathrobe, sipping my morning coffee and watching the news. When I saw him through the window, my heart nearly stopped. David never cried. Even as a little boy, he was always so strong. "Mom," he whispered when I opened the door. I messed up. I messed up really bad. I pulled him inside and made him sit on my old couch, the same couch where I used to read him bedtime stories. He put his head in his hands and started sobbing like his heart was breaking. "What happened, sweetheart?" I asked, rubbing his back the way I did when he was small and had nightmares. "I lost my job," he said between sobs. 3 weeks ago. The company had to cut costs, and I was one of the last hired, so I was first to go. My heart broke for him. David had worked so hard at that marketing job. He was always staying late, always trying to impress his boss. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. But you'll find another job. You're smart and talented and—" "No, Mom, you don't understand," he interrupted. "We can't pay rent. Our lease says if we're even 1 day late, they can start eviction proceedings. And rent is due tomorrow." He looked up at me with those same brown eyes that used to beg for extra cookies after dinner. But now they were filled with fear. "How much is your rent?" I asked, though part of me already knew it would be more than I could easily afford. $900, he whispered. "Plus fees if we pay late." $900. That was almost my entire monthly income from my small seamstress business and Social Security combined. But looking at my son's face, I knew I couldn't say no. "Mom, I wouldn't ask if I had anywhere else to turn," he continued. "Jessica doesn't know how bad things are. She thinks I'm still working. I've been leaving every morning and pretending to go to the office." "You haven't told your wife?" I asked, shocked. His face turned red. "I can't. She married me because she thought I was successful. Her parents have money, Mom. Her dad owns 3 restaurants. Her mom drives a BMW. If Jessica finds out I'm unemployed, she'll love you anyway, David. That's what marriage means." But he shook his head frantically. "You don't understand Jessica's family. They already think I'm not good enough for her. If they find out, I can't even pay rent." I looked at my son, my only child, sitting there so broken and scared. How could I turn him away? "It'll just be for a month or 2, he promised. "Just until I find something new. I have interviews lined up. I'll pay you back every penny, I swear." That's when I made the decision that would change everything. "I'll help you," I said. "But only if you promise me you'll tell Jessica the truth soon." The relief on his face was like watching the sun come out after a storm. He hugged me so tight, I could barely breathe. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much. You're saving my life." But then he said something that should have been a red flag. "Can we keep this between us?" I don't want Jessica to feel bad about taking money from you. You know how proud she is. I should have said no. I should have insisted that married couples don't keep secrets about money. But I wanted to protect my son, so I agreed. That afternoon, I walked to the bank and transferred $900 to their landlord. It cleaned out most of my savings account, the money I'd been setting aside for emergencies. But I felt good about it. I felt like I was doing what mothers do. We sacrifice for our children. 1 month turned into 2. 2 months turned into 3. Every time I asked David about job hunting, he had an excuse. The market is really tough right now, Mom. I had an interview, but they went with someone else. I'm waiting to hear back from 3 different companies. Meanwhile, I started noticing things that didn't make sense. When I visited their apartment, I saw new things. A fancy coffee machine. Expensive wine bottles on the counter. Jessica's designer purses multiplying in the closet. How can you afford all this if you're out of work? I asked David one day. Oh, Jessica's been picking up extra shifts, he said quickly. And we had some money saved. But the lies were getting bigger. I saw their social media posts. Dinner at expensive restaurants. Weekend trips to the mountains. New clothes in every photo. While I was eating beans and rice for dinner to save money, they were living like millionaires. I started skipping my arthritis medication because I couldn't afford it. I stopped getting my hair done at the salon. I even sold my grandmother's pearl earrings, the only valuable thing I owned, to make sure I could keep paying their rent. But every month, David would call with the same story. Just 1 more month, Mom. I'm so close to getting hired. I have a final interview next week. 6 months. 6 months of lies while I gave them everything I had. And the worst part? Jessica never once thanked me. She never once asked how I was doing financially. She treated me like I was just a burden they had to deal with. When they came for dinner, she'd complain about my cooking. She'd make comments about my old furniture. She'd talk about her mother's successful business and fancy house. All while I was paying for the roof over her head. But that night, that Tuesday night when she called me half the woman her mother was, something inside me finally snapped. Because I realized the truth that had been staring me in the face for months. They didn't see my help as love. They saw it as weakness. They didn't see my sacrifice as generous. They saw it as expected. And that's why, when Jessica insulted me in my own home, I decided it was time to show them exactly what kind of woman I really was. The kind who wouldn't be taken advantage of anymore. The kind who was done being a doormat. The kind who was about to teach them the most expensive lesson of their lives. We hope this backstory is giving you all the feels. Tell us in the comments, have you ever helped family members who didn't appreciate it? We'd love to hear your stories from wherever you're watching around the world. Now you know the truth about those 6 months of lies. You know how I sacrificed everything while they lived like kings and queens. But let me take you back to that dinner because what happened that night was even worse than I first told you. You see, I didn't just make any dinner. I made it special for a reason. That Tuesday morning, I woke up feeling different. Maybe it was the way David's voice sounded on the phone when he called to confirm dinner. Maybe it was something Jessica said in the background that I couldn't quite hear. But I had this strange feeling that tonight was important. So, I decided to make it perfect. I got up at 6 a.m. and walked to the farmer's market downtown. I wanted the freshest vegetables, the best chicken, the prettiest flowers. I spent almost $50, money I really couldn't afford, but I wanted this dinner to be memorable. Back home, I cleaned my house from top to bottom. I dusted furniture that was already clean. I polished windows that were already shining. I vacuumed carpets twice. I pulled out my mother's china, the set with tiny roses that I only used for Christmas and Easter. Each plate was washed by hand and dried with my softest towels. The crystal glasses came from the top shelf of my cabinet. I hadn't used them since David's college graduation 5 years ago. They sparkled like diamonds under my dining room light. But most importantly, I spent 3 hours making that vanilla pudding from scratch. Not the kind from a box. The real kind. I stood at my stove, stirring constantly so it wouldn't curdle. Adding vanilla extract drop by drop. tasting it over and over until it was exactly like the pudding David used to dance around the kitchen for when he was 8 years old. "Mom, this is the best pudding in the whole world," he used to say, hugging my legs while I cooked. "When I grow up, I'm going to marry someone who makes pudding just like you." I smiled, remembering those words as I poured the pudding into individual bowls to chill. By 4 p.m., everything was ready. The house smelled like heaven. The table looked like something from a magazine. I took a long bath and put on my favorite blue dress, the one David always said made my eyes look pretty. I did my hair in soft curls and even put on a little makeup. I wanted to look nice for my son and his wife. At 6:15 p.m., I heard their car. My heart started beating fast with excitement. I hadn't seen them in 3 weeks, and I'd missed David so much. But the moment they walked in, I knew something was wrong. David barely looked at me. His hug was quick and cold, like he was checking it off a list. "Hi, Mom," he mumbled, then immediately pulled out his phone. Jessica swept in wearing that stunning red dress, but her smile was like icy. "Hello, Margaret," she said, looking around my living room like she was seeing it for the first time. And that's when the comments started. "This place really could use some updating," she said, running her finger along my coffee table. "My mother just redid her whole living room with this gorgeous modern furniture. Everything is white and gold. So elegant." I felt a little sting, but I pushed it away. "Can I get you something to drink?" I made fresh lemonade. "Do you have wine?" Jessica asked. "Something good, not the cheap stuff?" I didn't have wine. I'd stopped buying it months ago to save money to pay their rent. "I have sparkling water with lemon," I offered. Jessica sighed like I'd disappointed her terribly. "I guess that will have to do." During dinner, every bite I'd prepared with such love was criticized. "This chicken is a little dry, don't you think?" Jessica said, cutting it into tiny pieces. "My mother makes this dish with a wine reduction that's absolutely divine. She learned it from a chef in France." "The rice seems a bit bland," she continued. "Maybe you should try adding saffron next time. It's what all the good restaurants use." Each comment felt like a small knife in my heart. I'd tasted everything before serving it. The chicken was moist and tender. The rice was perfectly seasoned. The vegetables were crisp and fresh. But Jessica found fault with everything. "Is that air freshener vanilla?" She wrinkled her nose. "It's so sweet. My mother uses these lovely eucalyptus reed diffusers. Much more sophisticated." David said nothing to defend me. He just kept eating with his head down, occasionally checking his phone under the table. "David, put that phone away," I finally said. "We're having family dinner." Jessica laughed, a sharp, mean sound. "Oh, Margaret, everyone uses their phones during dinner these days. You really need to catch up with the modern world." I felt my cheeks burn hot. In my day, family dinner was sacred time. "Well, this isn't your day anymore, is it?" Jessica said with that cruel smile. The conversation got worse from there. She criticized my furniture. "This couch must be 20 years old. My mother just bought this gorgeous leather sectional from Italy." She criticized my house. "Don't you think this place feels a bit small? My parents just bought a bigger house with a view of the lake." She even criticized my clothes. "That's a pretty dress, Margaret. Very vintage." My mother has the most amazing wardrobe. She shops in New York City. Every single sentence was designed to make me feel small, poor, old-fashioned, inferior. But I kept smiling. I kept trying to be the perfect hostess. Because this was my son sitting at my table, even if he was acting like a stranger. When it was time for dessert, I felt a tiny spark of hope. Surely the pudding would change everything. Surely that would remind David of all the love I'd poured into raising him. I went to the kitchen and carefully scooped the pudding into my best bowls. I arranged them on a silver tray with small spoons and cloth napkins. Walking back to the dining room, I tried to recapture that excitement I'd felt all day. "I made vanilla pudding," I announced, setting Jessica's bowl in front of her. "David's favorite since he was little." Jessica looked down at the pudding like I'd served her poison. "Oh," she said flatly. "Homemade pudding. How quaint." But I pressed on. "David, remember how you used to beg me to make this? You'd stand on a chair in the kitchen and help me stir. For just a second, I thought I saw something soft in David's eyes. A memory, maybe. A flash of the little boy who used to love me. But then Jessica's voice cut through the moment like a blade. "You know what, Margaret?" she said, her tone getting dangerous. "I've been sitting here all evening being polite, but I think it's time someone told you the truth." My blood turned to ice. Something in her voice made every alarm in my body start screaming. "The truth about what?" I whispered. Jessica leaned back in her chair, like a queen on her throne. Her smile was the cruelest thing I'd ever seen. "The truth about what kind of woman you really are." David looked up from his pudding, his face pale with panic. "Jessica, don't." "No, David, she needs to hear this," Jessica interrupted, her voice getting louder and more vicious. "Your mother needs to understand her place in this family." And that's when she said the words that shattered my heart into a million pieces. "You're not even half the woman my mother is." The pudding spoon fell from my trembling hand and clattered against the bowl. The sound echoed in the deadly silence that followed. But Jessica wasn't done. Oh no, she was just getting started. "My mother is successful. She's independent. She built her own business from nothing. She has her own money, her own house, her own life. She would never sit around making pudding and living in the past like some pathetic old woman." Each word was like a physical blow. I felt tears burning behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "My mother would never have let her son live in this mediocrity," Jessica continued, waving her hand around my dining room. "She would have pushed him to do better, to be better." That's when something deep inside me snapped. Because I realized that Jessica didn't just see me as inferior. She saw me as stupid. She had been living off my generosity for 6 months, and she thought I was too foolish to fight back. But she was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her life. Are you feeling the tension? Tell us in the comments what you would have done in Margaret's situation. I stood up from my chair so slowly it felt like the whole world was moving in slow motion. My hands weren't shaking anymore. My heart wasn't racing. Suddenly, I felt the calmest I'd felt in 6 months. Because I was done. Done being treated like garbage in my own home. Done letting them think I was weak. Done protecting people who didn't deserve my protection. Jessica was still sitting there with that smug smile, like she'd just won some kind of prize for hurting me the most. David was staring at his pudding like it might save him from what was happening. But nothing could save them from what I was about to do. "You're absolutely right, Jessica," I said, my voice so calm it surprised even me. "Your mother is a successful, independent woman. And you know what? I think it's time she started acting like one." Jessica's smile got even bigger. She thought I was agreeing with her. She thought she'd broken me down completely. "Finally," she said, clapping her hands together. "I'm so glad you're seeing sense, Margaret. It's about time you realized. It's about time your mother started paying your rent." The words came out clear and sharp, cutting through Jessica's celebration like a knife through butter. The change in the room was instant. Jessica's smile died on her face like someone had turned off a light switch. Her mouth fell open, but no sound came out. David's head snapped up so fast I heard his neck crack. His face went from pale to white to almost green. "What?" he whispered, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. "The rent," I repeated, louder this time. "The $900 a month I've been paying for your apartment at 2847 Maple Street, Unit 4B, for the past 6 months." You could have heard a pin drop in that dining room. Actually, you could have heard a feather drop. David stood up, so fast his chair fell backward, and crashed to the floor. The sound made everyone jump. "What rent?" he yelled, his voice cracking like he was going through puberty again. "What are you talking about, Mom?" I looked at my son, my lying son, and felt something I'd never felt before. Disappointment, so deep it hurt my bones. "The rent you told me you couldn't pay back in February," I said. "The rent you've been begging me to help with every month since then. The rent I've been paying while you and your wife here have been living like millionaires." Jessica finally found her voice, but it came out as a squeak. That's impossible. David told me he was handling the rent. he said. He lied, I said, turning to look at her directly. Just like he's been lying to both of us for 6 months. The look of fury that crossed Jessica's face as she turned to David was something to see. If looks could kill, my son would have been a pile of ash on my dining room floor. David, she hissed through clenched teeth. What is she talking about? David looked like a trapped animal. His eyes darted between me and Jessica, like he was trying to find an escape route that didn't exist. I can explain, he stammered. Mom, you weren't supposed to tell her. We had a deal. Our deal was that you'd tell Jessica the truth, I replied. Our deal was that this would be temporary. Our deal was a lot of things that you broke. Jessica stood up slowly, her face getting redder by the second. Are you telling me, she said in a voice so dangerous it made my skin crawl, that your mother has been paying our rent? That I've been living in an apartment paid for by her? Jessica, please let me explain. Explain what? She screamed, and I mean screamed. So loud my neighbors probably heard it. Explain how you've been lying to me for 6 months? Explain how you've been making me look like a fool. You've been making yourself look like a fool, I said quietly, but everyone heard it. Jessica spun around to face me, her eyes blazing with rage. Excuse me? You heard me, I said, standing taller than I had in years. You've been living in MY apartment, eating food bought with MY money, wearing clothes paid for with MY sacrifice, and you've spent 6 months treating me like dirt. I walked around the table slowly, my voice getting stronger with every step. While I was skipping meals to pay your rent, you were posting pictures of fancy restaurants on Facebook. While I was selling my mother's jewelry to keep a roof over your head, you were buying designer purses. While I was going without my arthritis medication because I couldn't afford it, you were taking weekend trips to the mountains. Each fact hit them like a physical blow. David sank back into his chair like his legs couldn't hold him anymore. Mom, I didn't know you were. Of course you didn't know, I interrupted. Because you never asked. You never once said, Mom, can you afford this? You never once said, Mom, how are you doing? You just took and took and took like it was your right. Jessica was backing away from me now, her face a mixture of horror and embarrassment. I didn't know, she whispered. David never told me. If I had known you were paying, you would have what? I asked. Been nice to me? Show me some respect? Only been grateful because you found out I was paying for your lifestyle? Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She couldn't answer because we both knew the truth. She wouldn't have treated me any better. She just would have been more careful about hiding her disgust. Here's what's going to happen, I continued, feeling more powerful than I had in years. Tomorrow morning, I'm calling the landlord. I'm telling him that I will no longer be paying your rent. No. David jumped up again. Mom, you can't. We'll be evicted. Then maybe you should call Jessica's successful, independent mother, I replied. The one who's so much better than me. I'm sure she'll be happy to help. Jessica's face went pale. Margaret, please. We can work something out. I'm sorry about what I said. I was just having a bad day and... a bad day. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Jessica, you've been having a bad day in my presence for 6 months. Every dinner, every visit, every phone call. You've made it clear that you think I'm beneath you. But I didn't know. It doesn't matter what you knew, I said, my voice rising for the first time. What matters is how you treated someone who was sacrificing everything to help you. David tried one more time. Mom, please. If you stop paying, we'll lose the apartment. We'll have nowhere to go. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw a stranger. A selfish, lying stranger who looked like the little boy I used to love more than my own life. You'll figure it out, I said. You're both adults. You're both capable. You've just been choosing not to be responsible because you knew I would clean up your mess. But Mom... But nothing, David, I said firmly. I raised you to be better than this. I raised you to be honest and kind and grateful. Somewhere along the way, you decided those things didn't matter. Jessica made one last desperate attempt. What if we pay you back? What if we... With what money? I asked. David's been unemployed for 6 months, remember? And you work part-time at a boutique. Even if you wanted to pay me back, which we both know you don't, you can't. The truth hung in the air like a heavy cloud. They were trapped, and they knew it. They had built their entire life on a lie, and now the lie was crumbling around them. I'm 70 years old, I said, my voice getting softer but no less firm. I've spent my whole life putting other people first. My husband when he was alive. My son, always. But I'm done putting myself last. I walked back to my chair and sat down calmly. You have until the end of this month to figure out your own rent. After that, you're on your own. David started crying then. Actually crying like a child. Mom, please.
I'm sorry.
We're both sorry. We'll do better. We'll. You're not sorry, David, I said sadly. You're scared. There's a big difference. And that's when I delivered the final blow that would change everything forever. David was still crying, begging me to change my mind. Jessica looked like she was about to be sick. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. You see, there was one more thing they didn't know. One final piece of information that would teach them the most important lesson of their lives. And I was about to drop it like a nuclear bomb. There's something else you both need to know, I said, standing up and walking to my kitchen counter. I opened the drawer where I kept my important papers and pulled out a thick folder. David and Jessica watched me like I was holding a snake. What's that? David whispered. Bank statements, I said simply. Every month for 6 months. Every payment to your landlord. Every sacrifice I made. I opened the folder and spread the papers across my dining room table like I was dealing cards. February 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That same week, I canceled my cable TV to save money. March 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That week, I started buying generic groceries instead of name brand. April 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That month, I sold my mother's pearl earrings for $200 because I needed grocery money. With each statement I read, David's face got paler and Jessica looked more terrified. May 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That month, I stopped taking my arthritis medication because I couldn't afford the $150 prescription. Jessica actually gasped at that one. Margaret, you stopped taking your medicine? June 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That month, I ate beans and rice for dinner every night for 2 weeks because it was all I could afford. David was shaking now. Mom, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. July 5th, $900 to Riverside Property Management. That month, I walked to the grocery store instead of driving because I couldn't afford gas. I looked up at both of them, my voice getting stronger with every word. $5,400 total. Plus fees, plus the money I spent on utilities when you said yours were shut off, plus the groceries I bought when you said you were hungry. Almost $6,000 of my life savings. The silence in that room was deafening. But here's the part that really breaks my heart. I continued. It's not the money. I would have gladly given you that money if you had just been honest. If you had just been grateful. I picked up my phone and showed them the screen. Do you know what I was looking at before you came tonight? Your Facebook pages. Jessica's face went completely white. Pictures of you at that expensive steakhouse downtown last week. The same week I was eating crackers for lunch because I spent my food money on your rent. I swiped to the next picture. Jessica's new purse. The red leather one that costs $400. Posted the same day I sold my wedding ring to make sure you had a roof over your heads. David made a sound like a wounded animal. Mom, you sold your wedding ring? Pictures of your weekend trip to that fancy resort in the mountains. Posted while I was sitting in this house with no heat because I couldn't afford the gas bill. Every picture was like a slap in their faces. Every post showed them living in luxury while I suffered in silence. But the one that hurt the most, I said, my voice cracking just a little, was the post Jessica made 3 days ago. I found the post and read it out loud. So grateful for my amazing husband who works so hard to give us this beautiful life. Date night at the most expensive restaurant in town. #blessed, #perfect husband, #living our best life. Jessica covered her face with her hands. You tagged David as a perfect husband for providing a life that I was paying for, I said. You praise him for being successful while he was lying to everyone, including you. I put my phone down and looked at both of them. That's when I realized something important. This isn't just about money. This is about respect. This is about gratitude. This is about what kind of people you really are. David was crying so hard now he could barely speak. Mom, please. I'll tell everyone the truth. I'll get a job tomorrow. I'll pay you back every penny. With what job, David? I asked. You've been looking for work for 6 months. What have you actually been doing all day? His silence was all the answer I needed. And Jessica, I turned to my daughter-in-law, who was still hiding behind her hands. You work part-time at a boutique that pays minimum wage. Even if you worked full-time, you couldn't afford half your rent. I sat back down in my chair and folded my hands in my lap. So here's what's going to happen. And this is not negotiable. They both looked up at me with desperate, frightened eyes. First, I'm calling your landlord tomorrow morning. I'm telling him that I will no longer be responsible for your rent. You have exactly 30 days to figure out your own housing situation. Second, David, you will call Jessica's parents and tell them the complete truth. About losing your job, about me paying your rent, about all of it. No more lies. Third, Jessica, you will apologize to every single person who saw that Facebook post praising David's success. You will tell them the truth about who is really paying for your beautiful life. Jessica started shaking her head frantically. I can't do that. My friends, my family, they'll think I'm a fool. You are a fool, I said simply. But more importantly, you're an ungrateful, cruel person who needs to learn some humility. Fourth, I continued, you will both get real jobs, full-time jobs, and you will start paying your own way in life like adults. And finally, I stood up one more time, feeling taller and stronger than I had in years. You will never again disrespect someone who is helping you. Not me, not anyone. David tried one last desperate plea. Mom, what if we can't find jobs? What if we can't afford rent anywhere? We could end up homeless. I looked at my son and felt something I never thought I'd feel toward my own child. Indifference. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you spent 6 months treating me like garbage, I said. Maybe you should have thought about that before you lied to everyone about how successful you were. But I'm your son, he whispered. Yes, you are. And I will always love you. But love doesn't mean I have to let you destroy my life while you build yours on lies. I walked to my front door and opened it wide. I think it's time for you both to leave. Jessica jumped up immediately, grabbing her purse like the house was on fire. But David just sat there, staring at me in shock. Mom, please. Don't do this. I'm begging you. David, I have given you everything I had for 30 years. My time, my energy, my money, my love. And tonight, you sat in my house while your wife called me half the woman her mother is. I looked him straight in the eyes. If her mother is so much better than me, then let her prove it. Let her pay your bills and clean up your messes and sacrifice her happiness for yours. But what if she won't? Then you'll learn what it feels like to be an adult. Jessica was already at the door, practically running to escape. But she turned back one more time. Margaret, I really am sorry. If I had known. You're not sorry you hurt me, Jessica. You're sorry you got caught. There's a big difference. David finally stood up, his legs shaky, like a newborn colt. Will you ever forgive me? I thought about that question for a long moment. Maybe someday, I said finally. When you've learned to be the man I thought I raised you to be. When you can look me in the eye and honestly say you understand what you did wrong. But until then, you're on your own. They left that night without another word. I watched their car disappear down my street, and for the first time in 6 months, I felt peace. The next morning, I called their landlord and explained the situation. He was surprisingly understanding. Happens more than you'd think, he told me. Adult children taking advantage of their parents. Good for you for putting your foot down. 3 days later, David called. Mom, Jessica's parents won't help us. They're furious about the lies. Jessica's dad called me a pathetic con artist. I see. We found a small studio apartment across town. It's not very nice, but it's all we can afford with Jessica's part-time job. That's good, David. That's called living within your means. I got a job, too. At a warehouse. It's not what I want, but it pays the bills. For the first time in months, I felt a tiny spark of hope. I'm proud of you for getting a job. Mom, I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. And I know sorry isn't enough. No, it's not. But I want to try to make it right. It might take years, but I want to pay you back. Every penny. We'll see, David. And Mom. Yes, you were right. About everything. I was scared and weak, and I let that turn me into someone I don't recognize. I felt tears in my eyes for the first time since that terrible dinner. Everyone makes mistakes, sweetheart. The question is what you learn from them. That was 6 months ago. David calls me every Sunday now. He's still working at the warehouse, but he's been promoted twice. Jessica got a full-time job at a different store and, according to David, has been much more humble since learning the truth. They've paid me back $800 so far. It'll take them years to pay back everything, but they're trying. More importantly, they're grateful now. They say please and thank you. They ask how I'm doing. They treat me with respect. Last month, David brought me flowers for no reason at all. I just wanted to show you that I appreciate everything you've done for me, he said. And you know what? I believed him. Sometimes the people we love the most need to learn the hardest lessons. Sometimes being a good parent means saying no. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable someone's worst behavior. I'm 70 years old, and I finally learned that my happiness matters too. That respect isn't optional. That gratitude isn't too much to ask for. And that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to stop saving them from the consequences of their own choices. Because that's when they finally learn to save themselves.
Wow.
What an incredible journey with Margaret. This story shows us that it's never too late to stand up for yourself and demand the respect you deserve. We want to hear from you. Tell us in the comments. What would you have done in Margaret's situation? Have you ever had to set tough boundaries with family? Do you think Margaret was too harsh or just right? Where are you watching from around the world? If this story touched your heart, please smash that like button to show Margaret some love. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our incredible true stories. Comment below with your own family drama stories. We love hearing from you. Thank you for joining Margaret on this emotional roller coaster. Remember, you are never too old to stand up for yourself and demand the respect you deserve. See you in the next story.